He is risen. What does that mean, though? So this is Easter, which we will now refer to as Resurrection Sunday, because that's what it's about, right? It's about Jesus rising from the dead. So what does that mean? This is the way I want to explain it. I'm assuming that in your house, it's the same as in our house with shelter at home or shelter in place or shelter wherever you're at. It is a mess. We make messes all the time. You'd think that we're home so we could always clean, but instead it seems like there's a new mess somewhere. We run the dishes every day. The dishwasher is always running. We've got clothes piling up. Why are clothes piling up? It doesn't make that much sense to me when all we're doing is wearing pajamas all the time. Our kids are studying. My wife's getting her master's, so there's books everywhere. There's computers. There's pens. There's socks. Video game controllers. It's a disaster. And the reason that is because we as people, as human beings, we make messes. Things fall apart. But Jesus, when he rose from the dead, he made all things new. That's what God does. Jesus said, and again, my daughter did all the graphics for this, so you can thank her. Jesus said this towards the end of the Bible in Revelation, at the very end. Behold, I am making all things new. So we shouldn't be surprised when we make these physical messes or these spiritual messes or these other messes that we are a part of. And we shouldn't be surprised that our God found a way to put it all back together again, to make things new. But when he puts it back together, it's not like it was, it's new. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning, because God can turn things upside down in an instant. He can blow our minds, and that's what he did on Resurrection Sunday. And that's what he intends to do now, today, because Resurrection Sunday is not just about heaven. It's not something that just happened a while ago. It's also for right here, right now, on earth. Where you're at this very minute, he intends to make all things new. And I know that in many of our lives, because I get to talk to so many people, that things are falling apart. There's this idea that is it ever going to be right again? And so I want you to hold on to what Jesus' words are, that he said he will make all things new. But when we talk about new and we talk about resurrection, I want to make sure that we're clear that this is not Resuscitation Sunday. This is Resurrection Sunday. And what I mean by that is that when someone is resuscitated, they don't actually die. They stop breathing and breath is brought back, but they never actually die. They return back to the way they were before. When I was resuscitated back to life, people would ask me this one question. It's the question that everybody always asked. So how are you going to be different? How are you going to be new now since you get this second chance at life? But the truth is that not too much changed at that point. The real change happened when I was 16 years old. When I saw my life falling apart, and I saw the way life went, just like the law of thermodynamics says, things will fall apart. They'll go towards entropy. And I could see my life, and I'm like, this is not the way things are supposed to be, are they? Because things would fall apart. And so I made the decision to follow Jesus. And as I followed him, and I died with him, then I was also resurrected with him. And what that means is that he put new life in me. I saw things different. I lived different. My purpose was different. That is when I started to have a new life. And so I want to make sure that as we discuss this, that we understand what resurrection is, that we understand what new means. It's not resuscitation. It's resurrection. And that's what creates new. So, behold, I am making all things new. We're going to focus on the word making. So making It means it's still in process. As you look at the history of God walking with man, there is always this process of things falling apart and God making things new again. As we'll look at later, he said it to Isaiah. And Isaiah then passed it on to the rest of us. And then we look in 2 Corinthians. And then we look here in Revelation. And then we look at people's individual lives and we see this pattern of things falling apart and God putting them back together again. So that's why it's making all things new. Not made, one time, done. It's a process. It's a process of recreation. So when we look at who God is, we know he's the creator, but he's also the recreator. And the beauty of what this means for you and me is that yesterday doesn't stick to us. So do not let the past, don't let the present even, get in the way of him making all things new and you accepting that reality. Because yesterday doesn't stick. Because we're constantly being reformed, transformed, conformed into the image of our Creator. The other word here is everything. Behold, I am making all things or everything new. So what is everything? Well, everything is everything. Todo. There's nothing that is not within that scope, including us, including this earth. Life is meant to be recreated. And so God is in the business of making all things new, and that means all things. And the last thing I want us to look at is the word new. Because we throw that around, but what does that mean? What does that mean that he's making things new? Well, the thing about the Jews is they love numbers. The Jewish people, the Jewish culture, their numerology, everything is intertwined in numbers. So for example, yesterday, if you saw the reflection that Stephanie gave, she talked about the last day of the week. Because the first day of the week is Sunday, the last day of the week is Saturday. So the number 7 means completion or fullness. It's over, it's finished. And so the next day, though, is not day 1. It's day number 8. And the number 8 in the Jewish culture, in this numerology, means new beginnings. There's a reason that Jesus rose on the 8th day, because he was creating something new. That wasn't an accident. The number 8 is all over Scripture, and I'm only going to give you a couple examples here. One of them was the ark, when God said, okay, we need to make something new. And when Noah was in the ark, there were 8 people in the ark. When God made a new covenant with his people, he commanded them that the boys should be circumcised on the 8th day, because it was a new beginning. It was a new relationship, a new covenant. This is what God does. Even Jesus rising from the dead in a garden is an example, a symbolism of making all things new. And it's what he always does. For me personally, when I made that decision to follow Christ back when I was 16, there was a verse that I saw after I made that decision. And I've held on to it because it's so powerful and it's so true. And so this is the verse. If anyone is in Christ, they're a new creation. The old has passed and the new has come. God is in the business of changing people. Isaiah, he was commanded to tell the people of Israel, see, behold, take a look. I am doing a new thing. To Zacchaeus, he came and he was a tax collector and he was living this one life. And when he came in contact with Jesus, Jesus did something new in his life because Zacchaeus surrendered. And in that process, he said, you know what, I'm going to give half of my money away and whatever you want me to do, I'm going to do because I'm new. The process began then. He wasn't resuscitated, he was resurrected. Something new happened inside. We look at Peter and James and John, they were fishermen. And Jesus comes into their life and he says, come, follow me. And so they're in their fishing boats. They're on the shore at Galilee, and it says that they left their boats there. They started a new life. That was their old life. Now they have a new life. Behold, I'm making all things new. It's what God does. And so on this day, when we celebrate that he is risen, we need to remember that involved in that is a new beginning. Now, I left a word out. I kind of did it on purpose because I want to finish with this. I want us to know why we're doing this. What good is it if we have all this good news, but we're not paying attention? What if no one is paying attention? That's why we celebrate, to remember what happened when he rose from the dead. And so the word that I left out was the very first word, behold. That word behold means to see. A better translation would be pay attention. Or like a kid that says, hey, hey, hey. Anytime you hear someone say, hey, you turn and pay attention, right? So maybe another way to say it is, hey, I am making all things new, because he wants to draw our attention to that. So don't miss this. In fact, he goes on to say the very next sentence, after he says, behold, I'm making all things new, he says this. Can you read that? Then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. Write them down. Don't forget. And so when we celebrate Easter, what we're celebrating means we remember. We don't forget. We write it down and we pass it on to someone else. We don't keep it to ourselves. We let everybody know, look, hey, we in our families, in our home, we share that excitement. And maybe you don't feel it. That doesn't change the fact that that promise is there for all of us. And it's a process. And these are my last words, because I want us to be reminded of this. Nothing can be resurrected unless it dies. Or another way to say that is, nothing that has not died can be resurrected. What that statement means is that we won't experience this new life unless we surrender. Unless we say, Jesus, just like Peter, James, and John did, I'll go where you want me to go. Like Zacchaeus. Hey, it's all yours anyways. And then he begins to create this new life. Jesus, what we celebrate happened 2 days ago. The reason we call it Good Friday is because he made a decision to die. And that decision was born out of love. It came from his reckless love for us. But by the nature of things, he knew that he had to die so that new life could come. He said to his disciples when they were arguing with him about it, like, no, you can't go die. He said, look, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains by itself alone. But if it dies, it will bear much fruit. And that's why we chose the name Branches for our church. Because he uses these pictures, these agrarian pictures, that also point to what God is in the business of doing, creating. And he told us, he said, I am the vine, and you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. And the cycle continues on. We were meant to also create new life for others as we abide in him and he abides in us. So let me close with this. Let me close with a statement that you can share with everyone. Hey, Jesus has made all things new. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Celebrate it. Pray together as a family or by yourself or wherever you're at right now. And soak this up.